This meeting is being held in compliance with the Brown Act. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. If a member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public, but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. For all members participating remotely, please ensure your microphone is muted when not in use. Please state your name during deliberations and whether making a motion or offering a second. Any voting member or member of the public calling into this meeting by telephone can press *6 to mute and unmute. All telephone participants should identify themselves prior to speaking. SCAG encourages all members of the public to participate in its meetings. We are committed to holding meetings accessible to people with disabilities. For members of the public requiring ADA accommodation, please call 213-236-1895. SCAG offers free interpretation services for members of the public needing information in another language. Please call 213-236-1895. The meeting will now begin.
Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, August 13th, 2026. This is the meeting of the Regional Housing Needs Assessment Subcommittee and is now called to order. Would the Honorable John Gabbard please lead us in the pledge?
Thank you, sir. If everyone could please rise if you can and join us in the pledge. And begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And thank you. All right. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, back here. Welcome to this first meeting of the 7th Cycle RHNA Subcommittee. First and foremost, thank you for being a part of the subcommittee. It is one that can be contentious, but is maybe possibly the most important work that we'll do in our time at SCAG. So I appreciate your commitment and your desire to be on the committee. The RHNA Subcommittee has an important role in guiding SCAG's 7th Cycle RHNA process. To talk a little bit more about the work ahead, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Jepson, our Chief Planning Officer, for some introductory remarks. Sarah, take it away.
Thank you, Chair Rhodes, and thank you all for being here today. We're really excited to be kicking off this next phase of our 7th cycle of RHNA, and we're very much grateful for your time and the expertise and the perspectives that each of you are going to bring to this discussion. Before we get started, I did want to take a few minutes and introduce you to the staff team that will be with you on this journey, and also to share a few of our thoughts on what we're hoping to accomplish through this subcommittee process. So first, just quick introductions to introduce our core team that will be working on the 7th Cycle RHNA. They will be supporting the subcommittee as well as CEHD and the Regional Council every step of the way. So first, Elizabeth Carvajal is our Deputy Director of Planning and Land Use. And maybe for my team, since we are in this virtual environment, if you could do a thumbs up or something so people can see your faces, that would be great. Or Elizabeth's doing the real wave, so there she is. Mayan Johnson, who is our RHNA expert, been through every cycle that I've been in as the Chief Planning Officer here at SCAG for RHNA, but Mayan is our Housing Department Manager and definitely an expert in this topic. Michael Dietz is our Housing Planning Supervisor. Kevin Kane is our SCAG demographer. David Kiobe is a principal regional planner supporting this effort. Caitlin McCafferty is another planner on our team supporting this work, as well as Alessandro Hall. So that makes up the collection of people we have behind the scenes trying to give you all the answers to your questions so that we can successfully move together through this process. So thanks to that team, we know a lot of work is ahead. So as you all know, RHNA is a technical process, and certainly there's no shortage of data and methodology and statutory requirements that we all need to be up to speed on. It's contentious as well. And as you will see, we are often confined in terms of what we can do by the legal framework in terms of how we can proceed. But at its core, this work is about planning for the future of our region and our communities. And we look forward to getting to some great recommendations through the discussions with you all. The decisions that come out of this process ultimately help us shape how we think about housing needs, growth, and opportunity across Southern California. I'd encourage you to not only come to this meeting as a representative of your individual jurisdiction, but also as an advocate for the region in your approach to this work. I'll save that last part again. We really are hopeful that when you come to this meeting, it is with your regional hat on, so we can think about how collectively we move forward together. So from a staff perspective, again, a regional approach is what we're hoping to get here to with this subcommittee. But also from our perspective, we have a couple key goals in terms of the process that we're trying to facilitate. First, our goal is to build a shared understanding. We want to develop a common understanding of the RHNA process, requirements, opportunities, and constraints. This includes not just for all of you as our subcommittee members, but representatives across our region. We want our decision makers and the staff who support them to be able to explain the basics of RHNA, how the process works, and how it may impact their communities. And to the extent you have stakeholders that reach out to you, we certainly encourage you to invite them to participate in these subcommittee meetings to be part of that learning process. We want to make sure that we provide you with the information you need to engage meaningfully in this dialogue. Our second big goal is to create a space for constructive dialogue. We're going to hear a wide range of perspectives and hear about your experiences. We are aiming to encourage questions, feedback, and very candid conversation. I'm also hoping that we can identify issues as they come, and they will come up, so that we can work through them together. Third, learn from the expertise around the table. We did expand the table this time for the RHNA conversations in a very intentional way. I'm excited for this subcommittee because I think it really does bring together people with different backgrounds, viewpoints, and expertise that is all going to be important for the conversation. We see that diversity of perspectives as one of the key strengths of this process that we've put together. And finally, and maybe most importantly, our goal really is to build trust and transparency in the process. So if you ever have ideas on ways we can do that more effectively, please do let us know. This certainly is the biggest one for us. We have an obligation to ensure that the process is open, transparent, and understandable. And I'm going to mention that last one again, understandable, right? This is a very complicated set of issues that we're working through. Please ask us questions, because if you don't understand, someone else that is listening doesn't understand as well. And we will do our best to make it as clear as possible so that the decision-making is informed by a common understanding. So with that, we don't expect everyone to agree on every issue, and that's okay. What matters is that we approach the work collaboratively, stay focused on our big picture, and work together toward the common goal of serving this region and our communities. So thanks again for being part of this effort. We look forward to working with you, and I will turn it back to the chair to move us forward with the meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. Couldn't agree more. As someone who's been studying RHNA pretty diligently, I end up with more questions about the nuances, and every time you peel the onion a little bit, you get more. But today, looking over the agenda, today is going to be a fantastic primer on getting us up to speed as a committee and what our role is going to be. So to get started, I'm now going to open the public comment portion of the meeting. Are there any written public comments?
Mr. Chair, we did receive one public comment before the 5 p.m. deadline of yesterday, and that comment was posted on the website and also transmitted to members.
Excellent.
And then we do have one raised hand as well.
Okay. So if we have that member who wish to speak, let's get them their time.
Wendy Bucknam.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to let you know that I'm here and listening. And I am not sure how to turn on my video, but that's okay. You know what I look like. And I'm here to be a resource and as long as I can. And I know everybody that's here is going to do a great job. And that's all I wanted to say.
You're outstanding, Wendy. Thank you. Any other speakers?
I don't see any other additional raised hands, Mr. Chair.
And okay, and you're all in notice location, so if there is someone that wants to come to a meeting in the future and is with you, just raise your hand and we will get that person on. So I'll now close the public comment period for matters not listed on the agenda. The first item on our agenda is introductions, and since we're going to be working together closely over the next couple of years, I think it'd be a great way to kick off this subcommittee is for each of us to not only introduce ourselves, but also share what we hope to get out of serving on this subcommittee. So for an example, I will go ahead and start. I've worked with most of you here, but those who do not know me, I'm Councilmember Rocky Rhodes from the city of Simi Valley. I represent District 46 on the Regional Council, which is Thousand Oaks, Moore Park, and Simi Valley. I'm also the chair of CEHD. 3 years ago, when I joined CEHD, it was very specific and purposeful because 3.5 years later, I wanted to be sitting right here on the RHNA Subcommittee. I was a new council person in Simi Valley, and I mentioned that I just got elected to the District 46, and they said, well, you're going to work on RHNA. And I didn't even know what that was, but I know that it caused a lot of consternation for our city and that very good, strong, intelligent, thoughtful people should be involved in the next round so that it is easier on our cities. And so I'm exactly where I want to be, and the pathway started about 3.5 years ago. So we're going to go person by person, and we're going to just call you out and give us your little bit of background and why you like serving on this or wanted to be on this subcommittee. We'll go county by county first. Let's see, Imperial County. I can't see who else is on. Is Mike Good still on?
Yeah, I'm on here.
All right, you're up first, Mike.
First county up to bat. That's cool.
Excuse me, pardon me, have to interject here. We did get another raised hand for the public comment, and so if we could square that away before we get into the introductions, I'd appreciate that.
Awesome. I don't see it here, so if we go ahead and ask that speaker to go ahead and introduce themselves and speak.
Phone number ending with 6448. Phone number again ending with 6448. If you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Robert Nigg. I live in Chino. I sent in a discussion item comment yesterday. My concern is, as a public citizen, it's very hard to understand how these numbers are being arrived at. And we've spoke about transparency and understanding, but in simple terms, when I run the numbers, and I've used the most current numbers available on the HCD website, nobody's hitting their commitments. It's an unrealistic commitment. And if you take the 12 cities surrounding Chino, we're averaging under 1% or 2% of our RHNA needs for low and very low income housing. And any program that has such a failure rate needs to be fixed. And those are my comments. And I'm hoping this subcommittee will not accept the problems, but actually take action to fix the problems. And that's all I have to say. I'm not a NIMBY. I understand. I want low-income housing, but we shouldn't be jamming high-density housing, and only the developers are coming out ahead. When you're getting a 1 or 2% low-income housing inclusion, and you're getting 30 houses per acre without adequate resources and parking and everything else, something needs to be fixed. And those are my comments, and hopefully some of those will be addressed. Thank you.
And thank you. And we did get your email yesterday, and I did read it end to end. It was very well reasoned and a lot of data and actionable items in there. I appreciate that. If you stay on the call and listen, you're going to actually get some clarity on what this subcommittee does in terms of dispersing the number, as opposed to what HCD does, which is come up with the overall number. And so we are in a small window where we can actually have some input back to HCD to come up with the overall number. But once that's baked, we're kind of in the process of coming up with how we're going to allocate those numbers out. And I feel and sense your frustration. I think everybody on the committee does as well. And we're going to do our best to, in our work, show that the numbers are being dispersed out fairly, even if we disagree with the number that was assigned to us from HCD. So with that, my good Sel, you're back up, or I guess if I have to re-officially close the public comment period, I'll do that. And then Mike, you've had some time to think. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I don't know if thinking does me a lot of good sometimes. So I was thinking of my experience now is like, this is going to be my 5th term, about to be elected 5 terms on the council here in the small city of Hopeville. My perspective is probably very different from some of the bigger cities and the metropolises that you guys represent. I thought of the title of it's a comedy that I used to teach my students, The Importance of Being Earnest. In no way does that play in its message apply here, but I want to use the title. I think in this process, it's important we're earnest in our efforts. I do realize that it's a difficult target, as the previous person said, to hit it, you know. But I think I've gathered anything from reading up on things is that a difficult process just requires you like eat that elephant one bite at a time, you know. So that's what I'm going to earnestly try to do with the rest of you on the committee. Got some good folks here. We got great help from staff. So I'm looking forward to, if not a difficult process, a meaningful process with the rest of you. Thank you for the opportunity.
You got it. Next up is the Honorable Gil Riviere.
Gil didn't make it. He would be sitting here with me if he was. Yeah.
Oh, not in. Okay. Moving right along will be, we'll do LA County members next. How about Cindy Allen? Are you on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Chair, for all your work on this. My name is Cindy Allen. I'm past president of SCAG, and I represent Long Beach and District 2 as a city council person. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, my goal is that, you know, we plan enough housing capacity across all the income levels to address the needs. And I like how I like that Sarah did say, making sure that we invite our own stakeholders to the meeting. That's going to be very important to me in this process. That we build trust and transparency. Like the caller said previously, you know, these are complicated issues. I'm not as smart as I look, so I need to understand this very clearly, and I look forward to asking a lot of questions and to really participating in this process and making sure that myself and then all of us and our constituents understand the methodology and how we've come up with that. So look forward to serving under your leadership, Rocky, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. Chelsea Byers, you are up next.
Thank you. So great to meet you all. Really honored to be here. My name is Chelsea Byers. I serve as a council member and I'm the immediate past mayor for the city of West Hollywood. I represent District 41 on the regional council. I've been involved in homelessness and housing policy for more than a decade, and meeting our regional housing goals is really the reason I ran for city council. I was serving on our city's housing element task force just prior to my run in 2022, so for the 6th cycle implementation. And yeah, really excited to be here to create a framework that meets our housing goals, that really matches the ambition and love people have for the state of California in a way that builds that trust and support for the shared future we need for our region. Thanks.
And thank you. Margaret Finley, are you on?
I am on, and I am honored to represent Los Angeles County with two outstanding people, Chelsea and Cindy. I've worked with John Erickson forever and absolutely love him. And the fact that he made his dog Winnie mayor of pets, you know what? Everybody ought to make one of their animals mayor of pets in their city. And Cindy, so good to see you. Yes, I will be watching the Raiders and knowing that you will too. Anyway, I am one of those people that I'm a council member, long-term council member in the city of Duarte, and I have served on RHNA. How many years ago? I was Bill Yawn's appointment, if that tells you how long ago it was. Thank you. 8 years ago. That's kind of what I thought it was, Kevin, but I wasn't absolutely positive. So anyway, it is a treat to be here. It does take a little while to understand exactly what's going on here, but because our staff is so outstanding, it should be a pretty quick learning curve. So anyway, I'm grateful to be here. Thanks to Ray Marquez for appointing me to this, and I'm looking forward to helping housing here in Southern California.
Excellent. Margaret, I'm glad that in our elected pool we have some course knowledge because, as you said, staff has some, but I'm glad that you're here and doing this. I really appreciate you on the team.
Thank you, Rocky.
And you missed one honorable person from your LA County crew, Mr. David Shapiro. And David, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair. My name is David Shapiro, and I've had the pleasure of working at SCAG and CHD committee for, oh boy, over 10 years now, and I've had the important job to work with Chair Rhodes and on CHD committee, and certainly work on issues of RHNA, and I know his passion is going to carry through to all of us, or all of our passion will carry through as well. I represent the Regional Council in 44, which is Westlake Village, Agoura Hills, Malibu, Hidden Hills, and Calabasas, where I am a council member currently. And my interest is doing all we can to help control or shape the narrative going forward from our point of view.
All right. Thank you, David. And we're now moving on to Orange County. How about we start with Debbie Baker?
Hi, can you hear?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Debbie Baker, Mayor Pro Tem, City of La Palma. We are the 3rd smallest city in North Orange County. And I'm a newbie at this, so I'm going to be relying on all of you other experts, and just look forward to engaging and, you know, trying to get this all worked out for all of us, making it fair.
Excellent. Welcome aboard. And rely on us, but I also encourage you to ask anyone in your city staff that went through the last RHNA cycle how it affected them and what they would be expecting in the next cycle, so you really get a feel for what it's going to take at the city level as well.
Thank you.
All right. And my friend Tanya Doby, you are up.
Hey, buddy. So I have just a deep passion for housing. Oh, my days. And so I'm Orange County. I am the 2nd smallest city. The only one smaller is Villa Park. I don't think it should be a city, but don't tell them I said that. And I just I've been around long enough to know that I definitely have a different perspective to bring to the table. So that is my entire goal. is to come and bring something that maybe the rest of the group hasn't thought of and lend a little light. And when all else fails, my very radiant smile. Looking forward to working with y'all.
Glad you're on. Thanks, Tanya. And the Honorable John Gabbard.
Thank you, sir. John Gabbard, I am the mayor this year for Dana Point, and I also represent on SCAG most of the southern coastal cities within Orange County, from Laguna Beach all the way to San Clemente, and then inland to Aliso Viejo and Laguna Niguel and San Juan Capistrano. In my day job, former to becoming on city council, I build houses everywhere from Bakersfield to Chula Vista, from West Hollywood all the way out to Indio. So I bought land, entitled it, and done all the land development work on projects across the entire region. So I think my hope for the group is to ensure that we're asking all the right questions and we're creating a credible product that people won't just scratch their head and say, how the heck did they come up with that? That there's actually some thought. We've asked the tough questions of each other and of HCD and the other stakeholders to ensure that the product that we put out there is something that people may not like, but at least they'll know that it comes from the right place.
Awesome, John. Glad we have your experience on board. Let's move to Riverside County now. And first up will be the Honorable Patricia Locke Dawson.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Patricia Locke Dawson here, Mayor of the City of Riverside. We are our own region here. I'm on this committee because it's such an important thing that impacts all of us, and I just want to be able to have a voice. And it's very SCAG-like to have all of us together to make our voice heard, because it brings us all together, and we all have various needs within our communities and different demographics, different communities. So it's really important that when we get together, we determine what the state needs to hear from our region. So thank you to Ray for appointing me to this. Thank you.
Awesome. And all of your outside of SCAG experience with CARB and everything else is going to be fantastic. So thank you for being here. Next up, Gary Gardner.
Good afternoon from the desert today, everybody. Gary Gardner. I serve on the City Council in the City of Desert Hot Springs. This is my second year in SCAG. I represent District 2 on the Regional Council. I also serve on the HCD committee. The Region 2 is virtually every city in the Coachella Valley except for 2. So and I'll loop them under my umbrella as well, since I'm out here and I look at the division between Riverside County on this committee. And it's nice to see we have somebody from the far east end, somebody from the middle, and somebody from the far west end, Steve, there. So we thank you for the loan of the fire truck too. We borrowed their Quint because ours is in the shop. And so all of my residents are saying, how come the truck says Lake Elsinore on it? But at any rate, this is a new thing for me too. The entire process with RHNA and the whole concept behind it, I am on a steep learning curve with that. So I will be listening a lot and maybe asking a few dumb questions, but hopefully they'll be questions that everybody can benefit from. I'm looking forward to this process and trying to keep in mind the need of the entire region of Southern California, as well as my area out here and all of Riverside County. And it's going to be a juggling act, I'm sure, but I'm looking forward to it. So thank you.
All right, Gary, thank you very much. Last up is Mr. Steve Manos.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Steve Manos. For the past 14 years, I've served as mayor and council member here at the city of Lake Elsinore. And when we're not lending out fire trucks, we are certainly growing at an amazing clip. My background's in real estate and lending, and I've been a director for the California Association of Realtors and National Association of Realtors. Housing's been my entire life since I was in my early 20s. And I'm not in my early 20s anymore. Very interested in being able to participate, understand the process, certainly. And then in addition to what some of the others have said, I'm also very interested in having the information on how we arrived at certain ideas or calculations, and then being able to go ahead and convey that to our colleagues back in the main group so we can help them understand and bring them along that we got into the weeds, we dug into the information. And so hopefully we have a smoother process, whereas in the past we didn't have such a smooth process. We want a smoother process and certainly go ahead and make sure that we're representing everybody's interests at the same time. So genuinely appreciate being on this body. Looking forward to working with you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Manos. Let's move out to San Bernardino County, and I didn't see, is Honorable Kurt Hagman on?
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Hagman could not join us today.
That's okay. And then next up is Helen Tran.
Hi, everyone. Mayor Helen Tran. I am serving San Bernardino City as the mayor the last 3 years, 8 months. And it's an honor to serve in this capacity. I am honored to be on this regional housing needs assessment, as I know housing is a crisis in our city, but not just the city, county and region, and look forward to being a value added so we could represent San Bernardino County effectively. But again, here to work together as a team, because we know that this is very much needed, and let's have a voice to be an advocate for all of us. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Helen. And the fabulous Aquanetta Warren.
Hello, everyone. What an honor to be with all of you today to hopefully resolve an issue that is of impact in all of our populations. I'm looking forward to working with everyone. I think this has to be a team effort. I do recognize that everything can't look alike in every city and every county, but I think with all these great minds on this phone call, we're going to be able to do something. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
So glad you're on. And we're going to do now Ventura County, where I'm from, but you've already heard from me. So last but not least, Vianney Lopez.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair. This is Vianney Lopez, Ventura County Supervisor. Oh, there I am. Proud to represent the 5th District here in Ventura County, former council member. I was elected when we were in the process of the 6th RHNA cycle, so I'm very much looking forward to participating in this committee to engage with our cities, with our partners, and as housing is a big topic for all of us, to really get into this. So appreciate the opportunity to serve alongside all of you.
Excellent. Thank you. I want you to look at all the little boxes on your screen and all the smiling faces that we have. 17 is a big number for a working group. 6 is a functional number for a working group, but for RHNA, it's too small. And we weren't going to get the voice and the depth of conversation necessary to do what all of you have described, which is be able to explain this fully to our constituents, what's going on. So remember that this first day we were smiling and ready to get to work. And if we keep that attitude through the whole thing, we're going to get to great results. And let's just keep it in that spirit. I know most of you, and I'm proud to call you peer. And there are many in our elected class that I'm not. You as a group are fantastic. And it couldn't be a better starting point for us to, one, learn about RHNA for ourselves, and then dig in and get different perspectives and share ideas on how we're going to navigate the waters. With that, let's see if we need to review and prioritize any agenda items.
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and then next on the agenda is consent calendar. Do we have any members who wish to speak on the consent calendar?
I don't see any raised hands, Mr. Chair.
Okay. If there's no action to take on the consent calendar, there is no action to take on the consent calendars. There's only a receive and file item. If any members of the subcommittee want to pull item 1 for discussion, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll just proceed to the next item. That would be No. Okay. So item number 1, transmittal of the RHNA statute. Oh, no, sorry, we're going to go on to the other action item because we're going to just receive and file. If you haven't read the statutes, it's government reading that is like mind-numbing, but it actually is you can see where when we have those questions like why do we have to do it this way, it's buried in there. So dig in, spend the 30 minutes or so and actually get through the statute. Next up, action item, the 7th cycle RHNA Subcommittee Charter. And who is taking that one?
That would be me, Chair.
Excellent. Mr. Lamb, you are up.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the RHNA Subcommittee. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Richard Lamb, Senior Deputy Legal Counsel for SCAG. So this item presents the proposed charter that will govern the subcommittee's work during the 7th cycle RHNA Housing Needs Assessment process. The recommended action today is to review the draft charter and provide input to staff. Following today's meeting, staff will incorporate the subcommittee's input into appropriate revisions and before we present it to the final charter to the CEHD and eventually the Regional Council for approval. As Chair Rhodes mentioned, the charter will serve as the framework that will guide the subcommittee's purpose, responsibilities, membership structure, and decision-making process. This agenda item is focused on that governance framework, and other staff will be providing more detailed presentations later on the RHNA process, the regional housing needs determination, and the development of the methodology. And so for now, I'm going to focus more on things on the charter that deal with authority and the composition, more of the legal items. The subcommittee was authorized by the Regional Council and operates as a subcommittee of the CEHD committee. For most RHNA matters, the subcommittee will make recommendations to the CEHD committee and the Regional Council. The RHNA appeals, though, are a critical exception. When acting as the RHNA Appeals Board, this subcommittee is the final decision-making body. Its appeal decisions will not be subject to further review or action by the CEHD or the Regional Council. And the subcommittee will dissolve when the Regional Council adopts the final 7th cycle RHNA allocation. In terms of composition, as you guys may have noticed, that the subcommittees consist of 17 members, representing all 6 counties of the SCAG region. 4 members from LA County, 3 members from each Orange County, Riverside County, and San Bernardino counties, and 2 from Ventura and Imperial counties. Now, this reflects the Regional Council direction to provide greater proportionality based on population while maintaining representation from each county. Members were appointed by the SCAG president, who also selected the chair. Appointees are regional council members and to the extent possible also serve on the CEHD. In terms of vacancies, the charter includes procedures for addressing vacancies and allows the subcommittee to continue its work while vacancies exist, provided a quorum can be achieved. The subcommittee may meet as needed during the RHNA process, and all meetings are subject to the Brown Act and applicable SCAG policies. A quorum is based on 50% of subcommittee positions and does not require representation from any particular number of counties. The charter also gives the subcommittee the authority to select one of its members as vice chair. This will provide continuity and ensure that the subcommittee can continue conducting its business in the chair's absence. In terms of voting, every member, including the chair, has 1 vote. And with a quorum in attendance, an action requires the affirmative vote of the majority of the members present and voting. The same rule applies when the subcommittee acts as the RHNA Appeals Board. Because an appeal must receive an affirmative majority to be granted or modified, a tie vote is not sufficient, and in an event of a tie, the appeal is rejected. For recusals and to promote public trust in the appeals process and to avoid any appearance of unfairness or bias, a member must recuse themselves when an appeal concerns their own jurisdiction, meaning their city or the particular jurisdiction that they represent. The member may not participate in either discussion or vote and will not be counted for purposes of determining a quorum for that appeal. This mandatory requirement strengthens integrity and credibility of the appeals process and replaces the discretionary recusal provision used in previous cycles. So the requested action today is, again, to review the charter and provide any input. During the 6th cycle, we took many lessons learned and we reflected these changes in terms of governance and also lessons that were learned from the previous cycle. So the targeted updates provide more proportional county representation, clearer procedures for vacancies, quorum, voting, and leadership continuity. So staff believes the charter provides a clear, fair, and sound framework for the subcommittee's work, and staff welcomes any questions or focus comments before the charter advances to the CEHD committee or regional council for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flam. We're going to go to comments now. And are there any members of the public who wish to speak on item 1?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any raised hands from members of the public.
Okay, then let's, if you want to raise your hand, if you have a question for Ms. Lamb about the charter.
So we have a raised hand by member Finley, followed by member Gardner and member Doby.
Excellent. Those raised hands are not showing up on mine. So, Honorable Ms. Finley, you are up with your question first. Oh, I got the hands now. Got it.
Okay, thank you. I represent, I think it's District 35, so it's not just my city, which I know some of the larger cities represent their city. So any appeals that I get from cities in my district, then I have to recuse myself?
No, Member Finley, that would only be the city of Duarte or your particular city, because the appeals come from the cities. And so in terms of the appeals board, you would be able to, and I need to double check, but I'm pretty sure you can still hear the appeals for, let's say, Monrovia or one of the neighboring cities.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mr. Gardner.
Ms. Findley asked the exact same question I was going to ask. Since I represent 7 cities, I was going to ask if it was the district, my RC district, or if it was just the city of Desert Hot Springs, but it appears it's been answered, so I'm good.
All right, and if Ms. Doby doesn't put the nuance on the question, I have a way to ask that question differently. Ms. Doby.
So I guess great minds. And Mr. Lamb, you said that there was some facet of that you would need to follow up on. So I would just like to ask that you definitely clarify that, because I understand not being able to vote on my own city's appeal, but I do represent, what is it, a district or whatever, the RC group. So if you could confirm that emphatically, that would make my smile bigger. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I will look into it and provide a definitive response.
Then I'm going to add to the question, there's the possibility of creating sub-regional groups. And let's say my district of Thousand Oaks, Moore Park, and Simi wanted to create its own sub-regional group. If they had an appeal as the group, I would need to recuse myself because I'm representing a city in that group.
Yes, that sounds correct. If there is a sub-regional group and it's kind of acting as one group together and you're representing that, yes, you would have to recuse yourself.
Excellent. All right. So do we, I guess we're going to actually do a motion here. Do we have a motion to approve item number 1 for the 7th cycle RHNA Subcommittee Charter?
So moved.
Finley, move approval.
Steve Manos. Second.
All right, I'm picking Finley and Manos. That's what I've heard. And clerk, would you please proceed with the roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Cindy Allen.
Aye.
Debbie Baker.
Aye.
Chelsea Byers.
Aye.
Tanya Doby.
Aye.
Margaret Finley.
Yes.
John Gabbard.
Aye.
Gary Gardner.
Aye.
Mike Goodsell.
Yes.
Patricia Locke Dawson.
Aye.
Vianney Lopez.
Yes.
Steve Manos,
Yes.
Rocky Rhodes,
Yes.
David Shapiro,
Yes.
Helen Tran,
Yes.
Aquanetta Warren.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion for item 2, 7th cycle RHNA committee charter passes with 15 votes yes, 0 votes no, and 0 abstentions.
We have a charter. All right, on to information items. The next one is an overview of RHNA. We're going to have an informational presentation on the RHNA process. This presentation serves as our RHNA 101 overview and is intended to give all subcommittee members a shared understanding of the RHNA process. Staff will review the roles of HCD, SCAG, local jurisdictions, and this subcommittee, along with key statutory requirements and major milestones leading to the adoption of the final RHNA allocation plan. To present this item, I'd like to invite Mayan Johnson, Housing Department Manager. Mayan, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Chair Rhodes, and members of the RHNA Subcommittee. I'm Mayan Johnson, Housing Department Manager. I have worked on several RHNA cycles, so I'm glad to be part of this process again and providing support to the RHNA Subcommittee on helping you make informed decisions as we try to produce more housing throughout the region. So as Chair Rhodes mentioned, I'm going to provide a brief overview of the RHNA process. There isn't going to be a test afterwards because if you've already started reading the RHNA law in your packet right now, there are a lot of nuances to the process. And so I'll be more than happy to take questions about specific parts of the process. Probably not going to be able to cover everything today, but as we go along with the subcommittee and different topics, we can go into further detail about the interests of the subcommittee and what we need to continue furthering. So for those uninitiated with the process, consider this your initiation right. So what is RHNA? It's a state mandated planning process to determine both existing and projected housing need in California. So this is your housing need, not just for the future, but also not having met housing need in the past decade. So this is an accumulation of what we need as a region. It's an 8-year planning cycle, and it allocates housing need across various income categories. So you'll get a total RHNA, but it's also assigned by income categories. And RHNA is not a building quota. It does require jurisdictions in your housing element to plan for new housing capacity to meet existing and projected housing need, but you're not penalized directly if after you've updated your housing element, if you don't build the units, you aren't penalized for that planning process. So the RHNA objectives, this is in Government Code 65584. There are 5 main objectives, but everything we do with RHNA has to further these 5 objectives. So that includes when we get the RHND, our methodology has to further these 5 objectives, and then our final RHNA plan also has to ensure that these 5 objectives are met and furthered. So in a nutshell, the 5 objectives are to increase housing supply and mix of housing types and affordability within the region in an equitable manner, promoting infill development and socioeconomic equity, protecting environmental and ag resources, and encouraging efficient development patterns. It's also to promote an improved intra-regional relationship between jobs and housing. And number 4 is to allocate a lower proportion of housing need in income categories and kind of spread the fair share across the region. What we want to avoid is giving more of the same. So for example, lower income communities, we don't want to automatically assign more lower income communities there because they are already taking a large share in the region. And then number 5 is affirmatively furthering fair housing. In a nutshell, this is to ensure that there's access to fair housing. And so housing isn't just about income, but it's also access to things such as amenities, resources, schools, transit, and these all tie together in what we try to further across the region. So for the RHNA process, we alluded to a little bit, and today we're going to talk about the first 2 and different agenda items. But it does start with what we call the RHND, the Regional Housing Needs Determination. That's given by the state. They determine through different data sources, consulting with the Council of Government, so they'll be consulting with SCAG. But once we get that regional number, the regional RHNA, if you will, we develop a methodology and apply that to the regional number, and then each jurisdiction receives a draft allocation. We'll conduct an appeals process on the draft allocation, and then once that's concluded, we'll have the final RHNA allocation. And then the next step would be for jurisdictions to update their housing elements and get those certified and adopted. So for the seventh cycle, I know there's some familiar faces attending today, and it's good to see a lot of you also working on RHNA again. But there have been recent legislation to revise some parts of the RHNA cycle. So one thing you may notice, we are here actually a year earlier than what was originally planned. So the RHND actually is due to SCAG. Originally, it would have been due sometime by October next year. It's now required to be 12 months earlier. So that's why we're here today and not next year. I hope your summer plans were not ruined. For income categories, we are increasing from 4 income categories to now 6 income categories. This is partially to accommodate the next part, homelessness, to ensure that we provide enough units to address homelessness challenges. Also, for our methodology, for those who remember that HCD reviewed our RHNA methodology last time, for this cycle, we also have to obtain their approval of our methodology before we can make a final adoption. And then finally, a major change as well is that in our RHND and methodology factors, there are additional considerations related to climate impacts, student housing, and cost burden in overcrowded households. I'm not going to get into detail today, especially in the interest of time, but just letting everyone know that the legislation has changed in some major ways. So for the regional determination, and my colleague Kevin Kane will go into it in the next item, but this is that regional number that's given to each council of governments for their particular cycle. So for those who remember, for the 6th cycle, we received about 1.3 million units. So these are new additional capacity in housing elements that these need to be accommodated for. Although if prior cycles, those sites are available, while there are some limitations on what can be counted, this isn't cumulative. So it's not adding 700,000, 412,000 and 1.3 million units. It's every cycle would need a housing element update. And in some cases, you can reuse sites. But for the 7th cycle, as Kevin will go into, it's still to be determined on what our determination will be. So for our methodology, and I'll get into this in the final item for today, but just as a quick overview, it takes that RHND and it allocates a portion of that to every jurisdiction. So every city and every unincorporated county region in our area. And that methodology can actually vary by cycle and it can vary among COGs. So what we did for the 6th cycle does not mean that we need to do the exact same thing for the 7th cycle. The methodology does have to consider a number of factors at the regional level, and there's a public comment period that includes at least one public hearing. And then, as I mentioned before, that HCD not only has to review it, but we do have to receive their approval before we can adopt a final methodology. So once a jurisdiction receives its draft allocation, once the final methodology is adopted, each jurisdiction receives a draft allocation. And jurisdictions may appeal the draft allocation, HCD may as well, and they can appeal their own number, they can appeal another jurisdiction's number if they so choose. But state housing law in 65584.04 does give the basis for the appeals. I'm sorry, that's 65584.05. So for the draft allocation and appeals, so all appeals are reviewed and determined by this RHNA subcommittee. And as you just voted on for the charter for further action, the subcommittee would be the final hearing body for appeals. So it would not be subject to CEHD or RC approval after this body makes its determinations. One thing I want to point out too is that the reduction from successful appeals must be reallocated back to the region. So that's a requirement in statute because what we receive for the RHND at the beginning of the process has to be the exact same number that we have at the end of the process. So any reductions have to be spread out throughout the region. And then for the final allocation, we will adopt that through our process. So our subcommittee, CHD, and regional council. And then that also must be approved by HCD after we adopt and submit to them. Housing elements for the 7th cycle are due by October 2029. And then Los Angeles County and Imperial County, due to recent legislation, jurisdictions within those counties have a due date of April 2030. So 6 months after the statutory October 2029 date. So just a quick outline of the responsibilities of HCD, SCAG, and local jurisdictions in the process. HCD determines, they provide the RHND, and then once that's given to SCAG, SCAG develops a methodology to allocate housing need and consider the appeals to draft allocations. And then the final allocations are given to local jurisdictions, and then they plan for new housing capacity through their housing element updates. And then in a way, it's a full circle because HCD is then required to review and certify submitted housing elements. And so the role of the RHNA subcommittee in this process to develop a RHNA methodology, including the release of a proposed methodology. And again, for the last item, I'll go into more detail about what goes in it, the timing of it, and then also making recommendations to CEHD committee and regional council on the draft methodology once we finalize the proposed methodology, and then also making recommendations on the final methodology. And then once we go through the appeals process, the proposed final allocation, that will also go through the process. And then this subcommittee is also responsible for conducting hearings and making final decisions on any RHNA appeals. So I did want to point out for the RHNA timeline, we did present a couple months ago at Regional Council. There have been some updates to this timeline in the interest of ensuring that jurisdictions have as much time as possible to develop housing elements, because we do understand that there are complexities, there are new laws required for 7th housing elements, and we want to ensure that jurisdictions have the most time possible to develop those. So the consultation, as Kevin will go into, we just kicked off with HCD last week, but we're starting, especially with the start of this subcommittee, starting to develop the proposed and then draft methodology. So over the next several months, we will be working with you on developing that proposed methodology. And in the meantime, the RHND is due to SCAG in October. But one major change is that we propose sending the draft methodology to HCD by July of next year. And then there'll be an appeals period after the allocation plan is out. And then we'll have the final allocation plan. We're aiming for April 2028. This is 6 months ahead of the original schedule we proposed. So we want to make sure everyone is aware of that and mark your calendars. And we'll be able to provide the timeline as part of the next agenda packet for this RHNA subcommittee. And then after that, instead of 12 months, jurisdictions would have about 18 months to complete their housing element updates. So with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that the committee has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayan. Let's see, for speakers, do we have any anybody from the public that wants to comment?
Mr. Chair, we do have one raised hand, Mike Callahan.
All right, Mr. Callahan, if you want to unmute, love to hear your comment.
Yes, thank you all. It's very encouraging. This is Mike Callahan. I'm a private citizen. I'm from the city of Los Angeles. And I do want to say my experience with RHNA 6 was not very favorable. I found a lot of the methodology was buried and hidden and not transparent. And I'm encouraged by hearing what's being said today, because my background is in engineering, so I do believe in transparency is the best. But my big question here is, in terms of the determination, I think you as a committee, your key function, and you have almost no time to address it, is providing valid input to into the determination. Because once those numbers are fixed by the state, that's like half the battle. You're just, so, and what I saw in RHNA 6, I mean, I've heard that those numbers were inflated by at least 100% that went down to SCAG. And I know that the numbers that were assigned to the city of Los Angeles were heavily inflated. And so, trying to take the metrics that the state claims they were using and apply it to the city of LA, and the numbers would have come up much smaller. So I'd like to see, or like to know, how does this committee interface with the state? And are you able to provide guidance to them so that you don't get hit with an unrealistic number. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Mr. Callahan, thank you so much. And you're 100% right. We are in a window right now where SCAG is obligated to provide certain data to HCD that they're going to use in their methodology. And does anybody from staff want to touch on? I know I think that's part of a future or a presentation later. But does anybody want to touch on what we are providing to HCD in terms of information, and then possibly, and maybe it's more of a Mr. Lamb question of what ability we have to affect the HCD determination number for us.
Mr. Chair, it's Kevin Kane. I've got the next item covering the RHND in detail. My recommendation would be to kind of follow along with that. Be fairly clearly established, I imagine.
Excellent. So if our caller wants to hang on, you're going to hear some really valuable information in an upcoming presentation. Excellent. Thank you for the comment. Any other public comments that we see?
We do have another one, phone number ending 6448.
Excellent. Caller, do you want to unmute yourself and provide your comment? You just remuted yourself. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I was muted and unmuted. This is Robert Nigg again.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Basically, I was just going to interject. I think it was on the next one, but I was going to piggyback on the last public comment. I think, and it's an uphill battle, and I understand that, but under Government Code 65584.01C1, there should be consultation, and I would like to see, because these numbers are unfeasible, that within a 30-day period, SCAG can ask for greater clarification in numbers and challenge those numbers if they are being inflated. The problem is nobody knows where the numbers are coming from HCD. So I was hoping SCAG would take a much more proactive approach in holding HCD accountable. Hopefully I made some sense there, but I won't make any more comments on the next one, because he discussed it just before me. Thank you.
Yeah, it does make perfect sense. I want to push back on the characterization that SCAG did not do this last time. HCD is its own wholly run operation, and how they choose to receive and deal with feedback and ideas is up to them. So I believe that there was, in between cycles, there was also several suggestions that SCAG and CEHD, and really the whole regional council, put forward to make the next cycle better. And I think a couple of those suggestions were taken into account, but certainly not all. But thank you for your comments. Are there any more public comments?
Don't see it. Excuse me, Mr. President. Just went up, Victoria Gomez.
Ms. Gomez, Ms. Gomez, would you like to unmute and share your comment?
Yes, hi. My name is Victoria Gomez. I'm a resident of LA County, and I work for the Housing Action Coalition. I just want to acknowledge that was a great presentation by Ms. Maya Johnson. It was very, quick, dense, to the point, and informative and an effective practice for this group. So I just want to say thank you and acknowledge that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. If there are no other public comments, we'll go on to committee. And first hand I see up is the Honorable John Gabbard.
I always like to hear what Tanya's going to say first, but since I'm up, a couple of questions, and I think it ties into the chair's question earlier of Richard and Tanya's. But if there's a sub-allocation or sub-region established, and the appeal or the regional council members' jurisdiction is partially in and partially out of the sub-region, it would be interesting, or I'd be interested to know, how do we handle that dilemma if it's easy if the sub-region mirrors the regional council district, but if it's not, if it's some subset of that, how do we handle that process of recusal? Secondly, I'm interested in the sub-region in terms of deadlines on establishment and on, is there the ability to reallocate within the sub-region in order to meet their goal or the goal of SCAG? Two questions.
Excellent. These are both questions that I have asked, and I don't recall if that's going to be part of a presentation later. And if not, does someone want to take the first swipe at that?
I wouldn't be able to answer the legal question, but for those who are unfamiliar with the process, RHNA law does offer what's called subregional delegation. It's in Government Code 65584.03. And so it's 2 or more jurisdictions. So that could be a city, it could be an unincorporated county, as long as they're geographically contiguous, can form what's known as a RHNA subregion. And so under this process, they would receive a subregional determination from SCAG, and then they come up with their own methodology. They conduct their own appeals process, and then whatever they decide, they give it back to SCAG at the end, and then SCAG folds that back into the final determination. The catch is that they do have to follow, just as SCAG does, for all of the requirements for developing the methodology, furthering the objectives, and so forth. And so right now at this time, we don't have an item on it because we do want to prepare guidelines in case there are interested jurisdictions. So we'll be bringing it back to the subcommittee for review and action at a later subcommittee date.
Maya, is there a deadline for when it has to be established?
Yes, I believe that the subregion has to let SCAG know the statutory deadline for us would be, I believe, June 2027. So there is some time.
All right. That is it for you, John? Yeah. Okay. Ms. Dovey.
Thank you, Fran. So I have I think it's a clarifying question regarding the redistribution after an appeal. Does that go back to the region? Does it go back to the county, or does it go back to the RC district? So for example, if we'll say La Palma, they wanted to appeal their number, would it go to the North district that they're a part of, or would it just go back to the region as a whole? How does the redistribution work?
Yes, for those exactly following along, it's in subsection F of 65584.05. We just included it, so it's at your fingertips. You can point out if I'm misquoting it, but we are required to adjust it based on the results of the appeals process. And so if it's a 7% or less, it's distribute proportionally to all local governments. So it's not relegated to a certain district. It's not relegated to just that county. It sounds like it's across the region.
All right. Any other questions for this presentation? Seeing none, let's move on. We don't need any action on that. Okay. Our next item is an informational presentation on the regional housing needs determination. Staff will explain how HCD develops the RHND and what data assumptions and statutory requirements inform that determination. The presentation will also cover current demographic, housing, and economic conditions across the SCAG region that could influence the determination number. To present on this item, I'd like to call up Dr. Kevin Kane, I believe visiting us from Chicago. Yes. Is that right?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rhodes. Appreciate it. Yeah, this is incorrect. Behind me, actually a great reminder. I'm here at my childhood home because the developer has put in an offer on my mom's house and the 8 adjacent single-family homes in order to turn it into a 78-unit hotel room plus 48 units of multifamily in an inner ring suburb of Chicago. So figuring out kind of how to navigate that situation there. which has actually been really nice working on the RHND while also thinking about kind of the personal and the neighborhood-oriented land use considerations that it kind of percolates down from. So anyways, sorry for that long introduction on this, but I'm Kevin Kane. I'm colloquially the SCAG demographer. We could probably do an entire dissertation on the RHND statute on this, and on the methodology has gotten so complex over the cycles. But you heard Sarah Jeffson, Mayan Johnson saying how we want to simplify as much as possible to make it as clear as possible. So we're going to try to introduce this today as a primer, and then talking about some of the data and conditions of Southern California relative to the country that are in statute for this determination process here. So I think I can control the slides here. Thanks to Edward for that. In a nutshell, this really flows from point 01 of the statute. So HCD, in consultation with SCAG, shall determine the existing and projected need for housing in the following manner. The first thing that they are supposed to look at is population projections. And as long as we're within a range of tolerance, which you see in your agenda packet, we squarely are, it should be from SCAG's RTP, Regional Transportation Plan. The next step is for SCAG to provide basically a package of additional data, and that's actually enumerated in statute. Some of this is stuff that's actually from our projection or associated with it, like a household formation rate. Some of this is pretty widely available census-based data, and some of this is a little bit miscellaneous, to be honest. Thirdly, HCD is required to consult with SCAG on what they have in the statute is assumptions and methodology to be used on these data points. So they take data points and you can apply them and make a wide range of assumptions based on the same data points. So HCD is supposed to talk to us about that and detail how they're doing that. Then the state uses our data that we provided, or frankly, they can use their own, plus their own assumptions and methodology to determine the region's housing needs. That's how we get this fun RHND acronym to start off here. We do get the opportunity to file an objection to HCD, and this is certainly a step that is a very clear kind of RHNA Subcommittee discussion here. Where we bring back and we would decide. This subcommittee would decide the merits and demerits of that. We did file an objection during the 6th cycle. And HCD must respond in writing to this objection. But it is, again, HCD who is responding to the objection, not any other body or any other group. And at this point, really, there's no other remedy. There's no other measure. The RHND is considered final at this point. So given how that's set up in statute, kind of what we see here, this is a really good data sharing opportunity to kind of learn about how to apply this, as I said, rather long-standing, rather Frankenstein statutory language well to our region and to the nuances of what is basically half the state when it's not necessarily written, exactly with that in mind. But you could certainly say that in Modoc County or Mendocino County or what have you. It's a good starting point for RHNA collaboration. I've long thought that this is a good opportunity to kind of understand some of the policy context of what's in the state statute and how that's looking to be applied so that there's a mutual understanding here. Unfortunately, or, I shouldn't actually put a value judgment on that, sorry. It's not really an opportunity for statutory authority for SCAG to determine regional housing needs. So that's, kind of the lay of the land in terms of the RHND process. And now I mentioned, I'm colloquially the SCAG demographer. Historically, this starts with growth forecasting. Historically, growth forecasting was most of the RHND. And it's really still the conventional foundation, and that's still in statute. It states that the foundation is going to be anticipated household growth associated with population increases. Notice how statute assumes that population will always increase. And this is a little bit wonky here, but stick with me for a second. I think it'll be worth everybody's while. Household formation rates, also called headship rates, are a kind of a big area of discussion for forecasters. And it's basically the way that forecasting works is you start with births, deaths, migration, immigration, the fundamentals, birds and the bees, as it were, of population, really. And looking at this, this is a kind of an illustration of an early draft of the current forecast we've got. So it's rounded, it's in early numbers. That's why it says illustration there, but it illustrates the point nicely. Over the RHNA time horizon, which is roughly 29 to 37, we're losing a lot of the younger age groups. The numbers are going down to the under 15, the 15 to 24, the 35 to 44. We are gaining a lot in the 65 plus age category here. That's the outlook over the next decade or so. But not every one of these groups consumes housing at the same rate. Basically, nobody under 15 is considered the head of a household. So their household formation rate is 0. And only a pretty small amount of people aged 15 to 24 actually are the head of a household, so 6%. Now, for this third line here, it's certainly a reasonable policy goal to have, say, more young adults able to afford their own housing units rather than staying in their parents' basements, for example, until their mid-30s or what have you. So this 25 to 34 group, this is actually really, pretty low. In 1980, 50% of Southern California young adults, 25 to 34 category, had their own household. This number was 50% in 1980. In 2019, it was down to 31%. It's just started to kind of plateau. And actually, we have it ticking up a little bit. I've got it ticking up a little bit even past this thereafter in our projections here. So this is illustrative here. But look at that. That's actually a growing age group as well. So what this yields is, an illustration of the household growth associated with population increases. And this is exactly how HCD calculates it as well. So, on the bottom line here for total, you've got a really modest increase in population, which is something that we're probably anticipating over this time horizon. But you actually have a pretty solid amount of household growth here. So there's a lot of, kind of discussion. This headship, this household formation rate thing is a really delicate piece of forecasting and of the RHND. So that's one of those super kind of in the weeds components that I did want to try to daylight here a little bit. Because again, as statute says, this forecast shall be the basis from which HCD determines the existing and projected need for housing in the region. I put a little bit nicer of a table of this in the staff report here, but just to give everybody a level set on how much each of these pieces contribute to the total regional number. In the 5th cycle, household growth associated with projected population increases was 97% of the regional number. That regional number was tiny. by comparison's sake, I believe my aunt had a slide showing that was about 412,000. It was only about a third of the last cycle's RHND, which was about 1.3 million. Now we're anticipating even much less population growth than that, so I would certainly anticipate that being perhaps even a smaller share, depending on some other factors as we get down the road here. But to kind of just illustrate a little bit of that, these are all the state level these are the state's population projections for our region, dating back to 2013. In 2013, we anticipated that we would actually be heading toward a region of 24 million people by 2060. And that progressively went down. By 2017. We were forecasting, the state rather was forecasting about 23 million people. This is the projection series actually used as the basis for 6th cycle RHNA. Then in 2021, COVID happened. There was pretty substantial outmigration, although that did rebound pretty substantially, thereafter. Fertility rates went down again. Mortality spiked a little bit. We didn't think we were even going to be getting 20 million anytime soon. Then the DOF put down a really, really low series at one point because they kind of straight lined a few of those assumptions about migration. They moved it back a little bit to 18.5 million, trued it out a little bit, and federal immigration policies had a pretty substantial dampening effect in the last year and a half or so. So where we are actually with our RTP here that we're just starting development of, is this dotted line, which is kind of on a trajectory to about an 18 million person or so region. So a modest population decline anticipated, but goodness, a really, really different trajectory than we had been anticipating. On the housing side, and you can see in this graphic here, the purpose of an RTP-SCS, what we call Connect SoCal. I did not tune in. Some folks probably did to the Connect SoCal subcommittee meeting yesterday. Is really to balance the outlook for population, households, and employment here. So these are kind of some important linkages. Housing production, and certainly some of the subcommittee members with long experience in this can attest to this personally, has really gone up and down a lot in the SCAG region over the decades, hitting highs in the 80s. I believe the annual high was something like 160,000 units in 1986 or so. A lot lower in the 90s as multifamily housing dropped, way higher in the early 2000s as greenfield development boomed. Then the Great Recession hit. However, the last 12 years or so has actually had pretty remarkable stability. If you look at SCAG region-wide numbers, I've reported on this at a couple of points to the CEHB committee. So certainly we're not hitting record numbers, but something that does stand out is this 45 to 50,000 units of consistency. In 2026, we're actually on pace right now for about 55,000 housing units in the region. In particular, LA County, multifamily and ADUs really standing out, high numbers here. So we have a preliminary projection. We released this on April 9th, and we're currently meeting with all local jurisdictions to review it and in the auspices of Connect SoCal 2050. But I would just draw your attention to the bottom left-hand cluster of bar graphs here for the whole region in the interest of time, because you can have kind of pretty much a flat population projection, 0.9% decrease, over this time horizon, and still have a pretty big increase in households. Not a massive increase in jobs, certainly older folks, certainly AI, an anticipated factor in that as well. And that has some implications too for, this notion of balance and who's living where, as I mentioned, giving some sense to what the policy considerations are and the policy goals are going forward. In 1990, the median age of a SCAG region resident was 30.5. 8 years ago, when we did this, our projection had that going up to 40. 4 years ago, our projection had that going up to 43.8. And now our new projection has that going up to 46.4. So we're anticipating a pretty different age structure than we did 8 years ago as well. In addition, we're anticipating a pretty different average household size. We've been hovering around 3, but dropping a little bit. Always thought we would drop a bit. I anticipated it dropping more because, the projections had varied a bit more, but, even more extremely now. So we're looking at a future probably with something more like a 2.5 rather than a 2.8 or 3 in terms of average household size. So that should certainly go into kind of some of the thinking, in the long run here. Now that's kind of the forecast side. That's the conventional foundations that predate sixth cycle and are still there in statute, as I mentioned. But there's been a lot of kind of expansion of existing housing need since then. A lot of legislation was passed in 2017 and 2018 that made its way rather quietly, into some pieces of legislation. I think SB 828, if I recall, was probably the most operative one here in adding household overcrowding. But I do want to highlight 3 data points here and how Southern California compares versus the region and how HCD has taken this into account. One is vacancy. This is the for rent and for sale vacancy rate. Vacancy's tight right now, but it's pretty tight everywhere. And that's changed in the last 20 years or so. About 2.3% in the region for the total vacancy rate, about 2.7% in the country. Owner and renter vacancy differ quite a bit. They're fundamentally different markets. But HCD has somewhat of an internal standard that they appear to be using for a renter market vacancy threshold of 7%. Statute does say that it does declare renter healthy market vacancy at 5%. So there's a little bit of a difference there between statute and practice, but you can probably make a case one way or another. And HCD has indicated in some of the early RHNDs and in last cycle and in a California Housing Futures 2040 report they issued about 1.5 years ago. Maya, correct me if I'm wrong on the date for that, please. That they believe a standard for a healthy market vacancy rate for an owner is 2%. So, they have kind of a policy target both for the existing housing stock and the projected future stock, basically to make sure that, going forward, we're at this vacancy rate. If we're too low, let's catch up to it. That's a piece of the RHND that's a little bit clearer. And I've got our handy little thing here. It was a relatively small piece in the 5th cycle, and it comprised about 13% of the RHND in the 6th cycle. I do have to say it was a little bit unclear what the genesis of that was in the sixth cycle, whether it was really kind of correcting for the present situation or adding enough vacancy in the future housing stock. So my understanding is that's been cleared up a little bit, but this is definitely one of those pieces that's an increasing share of the RHND. Hopefully that sheds a little light on that policy objective here. The next of these kind of big three, I'd call them, is household overcrowding. And again, I put a same graph here of the household overcrowding rate. Again, this is a pretty tried and true Census Bureau based measure. It's basically the percent of households with more than one occupant per room. And, you know, in Southern California, this really greatly exceeds the US. We've got about 9.7% of our households being overcrowded. That's actually down from about 11% in 2010 as its high. So that's actually going down. You know, population has not been growing quite as rapidly, and average household sizes are going down. This does track with other data points here. Higher for renter households, you know, certainly, but the nationwide household overcrowding rate is pretty low, about 3.5%. So this gap is pretty big between Southern California and the country. And one of the points explicit in 6558401 is that HCD can use the difference between a region and the national average. In past cycles, there were some language about comparable regions. This was not applied super clearly across the board, but now it's clearer in statutes that they can use this data point against a national average. So this kind of indicates that the goal of HCD is to basically have us plan such that there are enough housing units to not be more overcrowded than the 3.5% or so, which is the national average. So basically, let's add another 6% or so to the housing stock to alleviate household overcrowding in the region. This contributed nothing to the fifth cycle RHND, as it was not a part of statute at the time, nor was it part of the RHND, but it was about a third of the entire 1.3 million last cycle. The third, I think, kind of major piece is housing cost burden. So in the SCAG region, about 45% of households pay more than a third, 30% of their gross income on housing. It's rent, mortgage, associated costs. Again, it's a census-based question through the American Community Survey, a pretty tried and true rule of thumb. Imperfect, but we've collected the data for a long time. 58% of renter households are considered overcrowded, only 34% of owner households. A lot of owner households own free and clear. Maybe they're locked into lower interest rates. So there's really a difference in the markets there. So statute allows HCD to consider, you know, this conventional rate. It's actually hard coded in there. And again, it's written in there that they can consider it or they should consider it. I don't believe it's a shall language, Richard. You could check me on that, but it does reference the national average here. But the way that this has been applied in the most recent RHNDs we've seen in the sixth cycle and even heading into the seventh cycle across the state is basically to say that, you know, this difference, this gap here represented in the red arrows, of course, housing cost burden, as you may anticipate, is a little bit higher in the SCAG region than the rest of the country. You know, we should increase our housing need by this difference. So, you know, there's about a 12% difference in the amount of people who are cost burdened SoCal versus the country. So let's take 12% times the size of SoCal, which is about 7 million households. Let's add about 750,000 units to a determination. You know, the state goal here really appears to be suggesting that kind of an increased quantity supplied will directly reduce housing costs. That's, you know, certainly there's some relationship between quantity and cost. I defer to others with more experience in market-based housing solutions as to how direct that relationship may be. In the last cycle, the sixth cycle for SCAG, this represented about 9% of the full RHND. So we do anticipate a few additions here. Mayan mentioned this to the RHND calculation that we're going to be getting early versions of from HCD, and that we're going to have an opportunity to consult with back and forth, adding a little bit for student housing, making an adjustment to ensure that new housing added to the housing stock isn't typically just going into seasonal housing, that it's actually for the household population that needs it. An adjustment for homelessness, an adjustment which I anticipate being rather small for inter-regional jobs housing balance. This happens a lot of times in the state where you've got one job-rich region, but it actually draws from people housed elsewhere. We're a pretty big region. We do have a little bit of commuting between Ventura and Santa Barbara counties, and a little bit between, say, Riverside and San Bernardino. By and large, that's not a massive determinant of the number. And also units lost in a state of emergency. This is essentially the Palisades and Eaton fires. So we anticipate there being an additional line item reflecting that. So I'll end here with kind of an overview slide of the likely components and some summary and kind of key considerations here as we head into an RHND. This is really just a list here of all the likely components that we're going to see in an RHND, broken down a little bit. And I want to emphasize that there are a lot of different assumptions and methodologies that can be applied to the same data point, but that do show different housing needs. You can make some pretty different assumptions and methodologies about something like vacancy. Like I mentioned, some come from statute, some come from HCD practice, some come from market studies and historical trends. There are some adjustments that are clearly distinct. I'd say some of the new ones are clearly distinct. An adjustment for the unhoused population or units lost during state of emergency are very clearly linked to housing that is needed. You can kind of point to that really well. But some of these are a little bit less clear. I mentioned household formation rates. Those young adults who are living in their parents' basements, who we kind of anticipate might not be living in their parents' basements as much, those can perhaps show up as a higher household formation rate, or they can show up as a no longer overcrowded household in the future. So unfortunately, this practice isn't civil engineering exactly, as that one commenter mentioned, but we do have to try to be as distinct and clear as possible about which of these pieces might overlap and why. And oftentimes it's a matter of judgment and just being as clear and cogent as possible in how you present everything. The last thing, I'll just put a blue box around cost burden here, is that some adjustments directly count housing need. Certainly if population is growing, you can assume how many housing units are going to be needed from that. If there is overcrowding existing in the population, you can say, yes, there are this many people who are overcrowded. If you were to build this many housing units, they could hypothetically kind of spread out or unbundle. Unbundling is the term often kind of used in housing demographics. Those are relatively clear relationships with housing supply. Cost burden, I would probably point to as one area that has a little bit less of a clear relationship with housing supply. Certainly the main challenge, as we all know here in the state and in Southern California, but one that we kind of want to highlight here as maybe a little bit conceptually different, as we're understanding what goes into the RHND. So as I mentioned, HCD has basically reached out to kind of schedule and begin consultation. We have started to put data elements together and an overall kind of approach to understanding these pieces, as you see here. But that's the lowdown on the RHND, and happy to hear thoughts, direction, and discussion. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you. And thank you for taking the time earlier in the week to talk to me. I have a couple of questions, but let's go in order. Do we have any members of the public who'd like to speak on item 4?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So far, we have a total of 4 raised hands. Elizabeth Hansberg.
Elizabeth, will you unmute and you can be first? It looks like you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hello.
You are... Oh, okay. There you are.
Sorry about that. My name is Elizabeth Hansberg, and I'm with the housing advocacy organization, People for Housing Orange County. Want to echo my colleague from Housing Action Coalition, thank you for all of these informative presentations. I have two questions in regards to what Mr. Kane shared. I was hoping he could address whether we are using the same household and population projections for the RTP SCS and for the RHNA process. And I had a second question about something that was discussed earlier by the subcommittee. If and when contiguous cities were to form a subregion, are there any guardrails in place to prevent higher income cities from perhaps offloading some of their undesired units assigned to their lower income neighbors? I've heard this as a potential idea that, you know, wealthier cities should just be able to pay their neighbor to take their undesired RHNA. And we feel that this really would work against the affirmatively furthering fair housing goals of the RHNA process. And so just wanted to see if there was any type of guardrails or policies that would potentially address any of those, what my perspective would be called shenanigans. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Elizabeth, thank you for the question. Kevin, you get the first one, and I think Mayan's going to take the second one.
Can I ask Mr. Chair, legal, are we staff response direct to public comments or wait for member discussion? Is there a preferred method for this as we go forward in this meeting in future?
I have a suspicion that either Mr. Gabbard or Ms. Dobie are going to ask these questions anyway. So why don't we go ahead?
Certainly. In terms of the first question, whether or not we're using kind of the RTP, SCS, the Connect SoCal numbers, or state numbers or a different projection. You know, I've just read what's out in statute. It says that if we're within 1.5%, which we are, the HCD shall use the RTP projections from the Council of Governments. That was actually not the case in the 6th cycle. But we'll see what happens in the consultation process. I imagine some back and forth discussion on that. I think HCD's preference is typically to use the state projection, but we are really close. In fact, we both have pretty professional high-level forecasting operations, especially at the county and above levels.
Excellent. So our numbers are both RTP and what we're giving to HCD. Mayan, do you want to take the second one?
Yeah. So if you guardrails for subregional delegation, a subregion undertaking a subregional delegation is subject to the exact same requirements as the COG. So you'll see throughout the statute that every time it mentions Council of Government, it will say or as appropriate the delegating subregion. So they would be required to follow a methodology. They have to further all the objectives, and they have to receive HCD approval of their final methodology. So it's the same guardrails that SCAG and other COGs are subject to.
And in terms of Elizabeth's shenanigans that you're talking about, there was a cycle where we could trade. And could you discuss whether that's available now and when did that end?
Yes, prior to the 6th cycle, they called it trade and transfer of units. For various reasons, a jurisdiction could hypothetically trade units with another jurisdiction, and there could be financial incentives involved, or for other reasons. But that option was removed for the 6th cycle, so it's not available right now either.
Yeah. So thank you for the questions and for the answer, staff. We have our next call or public comment.
Mike Callahan.
Mr. Callahan, please unmute and ask a question.
Thank you. I know there's a lot of pieces that go in, and I appreciate the presentation. It's probably the clearest one that I've encountered so far, so I really appreciate that. But I think, you know, as a member of the public and looking at the presentation, I want to address strictly the population estimate. I have a hard time accepting that we need so many units. And where I'm coming from is you have a total population delta of about 45,000 people. So if every single person, that delta gets a household, all 45,000, that is still far less than the numbers you're projecting based on the way you've done the calculation. And so one of the things I note is you have 475,000 people less than 15 years old that you say, well, they don't form households, but they're leaving the region. And I would assume that anyone under 15 that leaves the region is leaving with an adult, which means they're leaving a housing unit. So in your calculation, I would expect to see both pluses and minuses regarding the need for housing. And so if you could, because I think your number for required housing to address population increase, it's just not going to fly with the public the way that number's put together. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Do we have another public comment?
Wendy Bucknam.
Ms. Bucknam, you are up.
Thank you. This question is for Mr. Kane, Kevin. Who from SCAG meets with state HCD during the consultation process? And is it only SCAG technical staff? Or could it maybe, for example, include the chair of the RHNA Subcommittee? And this is just, I'm just going to give you the multi-part question so you can answer it all and I won't follow up then. Is there time to allow the RHNA Subcommittee to be briefed during that consultation process on any disagreements or any comments between SCAG and HCD and offer guidance to SCAG staff?
Excellent. Thank you for the questions. Let's address that one as we're going. So is that a Mayan or a Kevin?
I can answer part of the question. So the initial consultation was very high level where I believe it was Sarah Jepson, Elizabeth Carvajal, and me were with some other high level HCD staff. There wasn't any data talked about, no data sources, no application. It was just more of what we hope to get out of the process, introductions, because there are a lot of new HCD staff on board. And so we will have follow-up discussions specifically on the data sources, technical data in the coming months.
Excellent. Kevin,
if I might add to that, I think that's a good characterization and that it can kind of vary a little bit. There are pieces that are really deep in the weeds. I mentioned, for example, last cycle, there were changes to how HCD was treating vacancy that were somewhat driven by statute, but also somewhat driven by their internal practice. Given that we're half the state, essentially, they really needed to suss that out and kind of learn about, how that actually manifests itself in Southern California, given our vacancy rates, our history of vacancy rates. You can see the longitudinal series up there, for example. So this does, this has led to some really deep technical discussions too. You can also just give an illustration of how there's somewhat of a technical and policy discussion together with, say, this cost burden question. I can say that in last cycle's consultation process, cost burden was also a new factor. And some of the assumptions and methodology are material, in terms of, this calculation means you're, going at it this way, that calculation means you're going at it that way. So there are a lot of, there's a bit of overlap, but I think Mayan probably has the clearest answer. So I will just leave it to her, that it kind of starts broader and does get into some deeper technical components.
And to just emphasize, because it was part of the question, I certainly will be asking to interject myself into any of those discussions to the extent that that's an appropriate thing to do, because we should have voice. And I think that we should also make the larger data set to which you're drawing your conclusions available to the public, so they can also run models if they would like, just to say, I get it, I agree, I disagree, but you know what we're working with on the assumptions we made. Just for time, we're going to probably, for questions, get to them. If there's a quick answer, we'll get, and if not, we'll jot notes and we'll start moving forward, because we do have one more item to get through. More public speakers.
We have 4 more raised hands. Henry Fung.
Henry, please, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Henry Fong. I am a member of public, and thank you, Dr. Kane, again for your great presentation. I think, regarding, I was involved in the last cycle, going through my old Twitter account and where I tweeted about this topic. And I remember when, SCAG as a board, the regional council gave this 400,000 original thing, which was really unresponsive. And then, and then HCD came back with, 1.3 million. And then SCAD came back with, 821 to 924,000. And so, we really need to see more collaboration. I hope, SCAG and HCD are collaborating and, doing so better, because that number, when that number came out at 430,000, that was, in my opinion, that was just not credible. And that's really came up with HCD. I think that really gave them a sour taste in the mouth. And that's what ended up with such high number. So you guys need to work together. I think the discussion about with the housing overcrowding number and making it the national average. I remember in the previous cycle, there was an argument Dr. Kane made that, well, more of the SCAG region is immigrant. Therefore, immigrants will tend to overcrowd more. And I really didn't like that argument. So I'm happy that state statute has said we have to get to our national average. And yes, there are going to be households that are going to need to form. We have, as previous caller has stated, there are people that want to move out of their homes, and they will form families. They will get together and create families if they're not living in their mother's basement. So, that's what we need to think about long term. That's why we're getting more housing, is so that people can form households and that we can also attract, jobs and people moving from other parts of the country. We know that, other states, for example, are very restrictive on LGBTQ laws. And so those people want to move to a state that might be more LGBTQ friendly. And California is one of those states, but they can't do that because we don't have enough housing. So just thinking about those overarching goals. And this is not a question. So thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Next public comment.
Next comment is Matt Glesney.
Matt, if you want to unmute, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. Matt Glesney, just speaking, not on behalf of the Department of City Planning here, just on my own, but thanks so much for the great information, as always, Kevin. Just a high level and a specific one. High level, I do recoil kind of to Henry's point there about using factors such as we're losing tons of households, we're losing our children. These should really not be used, to me, to justify kind of arguments about lowering our housing needs. That's actually, to me, an indication that we have tremendous housing needs, and people would not be leaving the region in such numbers if they didn't have, if they had better housing options. So, we're starting to see progress on a lot of these numbers for the first time. I really hope we don't, as a region, backslide or get into another contentious issue with HCD and using those factors. Specifically, Kevin, I'm going to push back on you made an assertion that cost burden may not be something that has a direct correlation to housing supply. You said it more nuanced than that, but I'm going to send you what I think is the most compelling chart I've ever seen on housing in my experience, and it's actually almost a perfect relationship between cost burden and the number of homes we have per adult. So I heard you sort of say that there might not be to me, there is a very clear relationship between things cost more when you don't have enough homes for our population. So I'll send you some data on that. We don't have to go back and forth, but thanks so much for the opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may clarify, pursuant to 655-8401's provisions.
Right.
For the record.
Yeah. It is statute. So public comment?
The last one is Trish Kelly.
Ms. Kelly, please.
Thank you. I am a city council member in Mission Viejo, and I do serve on SCAG on the Transportation Committee and as the TCA representative on the Regional Council. And I think there is one piece of good news in all of this, and that is that we are getting an earlier start on this, and there is more accommodation in time for cities in proposing and working on their housing element. But it certainly appears that there are less options for cities, and with no appeal opportunities. And then also adding 2 income levels, going from 4 to 6. Is there any accommodation for the cities? Any help in subsidizing, or I know there won't be subsidy, but in maybe helping to plan that? Adding 2 more income levels, I think could present a challenge.
I don't disagree with you, Trish, and since you have access to SCAG staff, I want you to make time to reach out directly. But those income levels are not they're not being launched by us. That's a statute coming down. So we're going to give data and try to do our best, but that we still have to be in compliance with that. So thank you for your comment. Move on now then to our council. And if you could be brief, and that's my fault because we did more dialogue in public comments that was actually really necessary, but I thought it'd be a good idea, but we're running low on time. Mr. Gabbard, and you go, and if we have a question, we'll probably jot it down and get back to you.
Yeah, no, mine was more of a statement, and I will defer to Ms. Doby so that we can move this along.
Excellent. Ms. Doby.
So I actually have 3 questions, and if someone could just give me the answers, I would be eternally grateful. So on the housing over 65 plus, I am slightly concerned that we are looking to add housing for people who may not be looking to any longer care for themselves. So maybe in the addition of housing considerations, adding senior housing. I see we're adding student housing, maybe adding senior housing, because I don't know very many 65-year-olds that are looking to strike out on their own. And then for the household overcrowding, are we considering that it's the affordability that's causing people to bundle? And if so, to what degree? Like, do we know why they're living together? Like, are they saving up for their own house and you're trying to hurry up and make them move out? I don't know. And then the last one is for the housing cost burden. When we're looking at the burden of the cost of housing, are we considering where they're currently staying, or are we considering where they would like to stay? Because those might be 2 completely separate different spaces, and it might be pertinent. So that's it.
All of the above noted, and Kevin, I see you wanting to jump in, but you will have access to Tanya to answer those questions and put them out. I had similar ones.
Existing and projected need pursuant to 6558401 is the charge for RHND. There are a lot of bits and pieces.
Yeah, there we are. Okay. If there are no more comments, I'm going to move on to the next item. And let's see. This is on RHNA methodology. Our final agenda item is an informational presentation on the RHNA methodology process. The RHNA methodology is one of the most significant responsibilities of this subcommittee and will be the primary focus of our work over the coming months. Staff will review statutory requirements, planning factors to consider, public outreach requirements, and key policy considerations. To lead this discussion, we're going to invite back Maya Johnson to present the item.
Hi, it's me again. In the interest of time, I will just focus on what we'd like the subcommittee to focus on as homework, because this is not the last you're going to hear about the methodology process, but this is more of we want to listen on the types of things that you want in the methodology, in the allocation, but I do want to spell out early on what we should be considering as the minimum, but also our limitations on things we can't consider. So I'm just going to skip ahead on a few slides because I did mention it during RHNA 101. I did want to call out, just reminding you about the different phases of the methodology. So right now we're in the proposed methodology development, and we'll be talking about the different components over the next several meetings. As part of this, we're also going to work on releasing a survey packet that is required by statute, but we have to survey our jurisdictions on local planning factors and also AFFH goals and practices. pieces. And you'll be seeing that most likely at the next meeting, but just wanted to give you a quick preview. But once this subcommittee around March 2027 releases the proposed methodology, we'll have a public comment period, and then SCAG staff will gather all the comments and all the recommendations, and then prepare a draft for further action from this committee, CHD and RC, and that'll be submitted to HCD for their review and approval. Crossing my fingers that they approve it on the first try, and after that we'll get the final methodology through this subcommittee and the process again. So just as a reminder, our statutory requirements that we have to further the 5 objectives. So every allocation, if we develop a formula, that it does we have to point to how it furthers the 5 objectives. We do have to make sure it's also informed by the development pattern included in our regional plan, the Connect SoCal plan, and also consider different opportunities and constraints for planning. And those are in 65584.04. The methodology cannot consider by statute local measures limiting growth, prior RHNA under production, and stable production from the prior cycle. So these are things we cannot quote or use as determinations in our methodology process. So this is a quick and very shorthand list of local planning factors, opportunities, and constraints. They are also an attachment to this specific staff report, but these are different factors that we do have to consider on the regional level. It does not necessarily mean we have to have our formula based on each of these factors. So I did want to make that differentiation, but we do have to consider these as a region. So for example, I want to point out like farm worker housing needs. This isn't affect every single jurisdiction in a region, just a select few or a select handful. But we do have to make sure that whatever we come up with with our proposed methodology considers this as part of it. So perhaps part of the allocation formula does meet farm worker housing needs. So it doesn't have to be a specific part of the actual formula. And there are a few local planning factors that are new to this cycle. So they're related to disaster-related housing loss, overcrowding, housing cost burden, homelessness, housing needs is also mentioned as part of the new part of RHND, and also some additional revisions to university and college housing needs. And so these are different opportunities and constraints that we'd have to consider in our methodology. But again, our allocation formula does not have to be based on every one of these factors. But we just have to consider them and ensure that our final allocation methodology does further the 5 objectives. So this is just, I covered most of this and Kevin did as well for what's new. But in your packet, you'll see we've spelled out what's new for this cycle. And then I think in the interest of time, I can go over what we did for the 6 cycle methodology the next time we convene, if that's all right with the chair.
Sure.
But again, just want to point out the methodology timeline. So our next steps, and again, we'll be talking about the several different types of factors based on feedback from the subcommittee, but basically going over the different factors that we are going to eventually propose for the RHNA methodology. And so the proposed methodology, once that gets put all together, we'll be taking that before the subcommittee scheduled for March of next year. We'll have the public comment period in early spring, followed by revisions. That's at HCD approval. We'll have the draft and final review by summer, and then we're hoping to get that final allocation ready and adopted by October 2027. So that in a nutshell is my presentation on the RHNA methodology. But again, I'm available to answer any questions that the subcommittee has. Thank you.
One of the things about your presentation that you kind of skipped over a little bit that I think is important for us as the subcommittee to think about is each of those items that we must consider. We're going to take a couple of them at a time and really kind of do a deep dive on how do we think about that and how do we feel that they should be weighted in an overall plan. And I like that because some of the things I read them and I go, oh, I understand what that is. And others I go, I don't understand how that is associated with our work. So I'm glad we're going to be taking time in future meetings to slow down and go through those individual ones. We're right up towards the edge. Do we have any public comments on this?
Mr. Chair, I don't see any raised hands at this time.
Excellent. And do we have any staff that would like to comment? Or committee members, sorry. All right. We are going to move towards adjournment, and surprisingly to me and maybe everyone else who's been texting me, it's going to be on time. Before we adjourn, I want to make a moment to inform members that we've been able to set a recurring date for our RHNA Subcommittee meetings. Please make sure to mark your calendars for this second Thursday of every month from 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific. With this schedule, our next meeting is Thursday, September 10th. I also want to note, as mentioned by Richard Lamb during his charter item, that we will be able to vote on a vice chair for the subcommittee. We'll hold hold an election for vice chair at the September 10th meeting. If you're interested in serving as the RHNA Subcommittee vice chair, please send an email by September 3rd to our clerk, Maggie. And with that, thank you all. Oh, Margaret.
Rocky, just a quick question. Are any of these meetings going to be in person?
For now, they're going to be Zoom.
Okay.
There's years of this, and I like in person, but yeah, I know in September I'll be in North Carolina. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for participating in this kickoff meeting of the RHNA Subcommittee. As I said in the beginning, I couldn't be more honored to be serving with all of you incredibly smart people. And thank you to the members of the public that called in and asked really great questions. They're on our minds as well. And I think this cycle is going to be super interesting. And if we do it right the first time by sharing what we're doing with everyone and taking the time to do it, we're going to get great results. So with that, thank you very much, and meeting adjourned.